Mary will be talking on the tips and tricks and the magic in Moodle. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Dom. This is Mary Rydesky, and I'm speaking to you from Alaska this morning. It is still morning, and we're at the season of the year where the sun is shining 24 hours a day, just about. We're very close to our season of the longest day of the year. So it's kind of foolery for us to know whether it's day or night. But thank you, iMooters. It's a pleasure to speak with you again this year. And my presentation this year is fairly limited in a long list that you can come up with on tips and tricks. I want to talk to you a little bit about things that give us guidance in the background. And if you are a user who has ideas and things that you wish to share, I'd love to have you both ask from the microphone and make comments in our chat. So here we go. We're talking about where we are with the materials in Moodle. I suggest that we start with a good sound foundation on creating objectives for anything that we put in Moodle. And when I'm working on any course or working with a trainer who is, I'm always asking them not what you want the person to get by working through this Moodle course, but if you were to be the learner in your course, how would you answer? What will I get from this course? And we have the saying that that's with them, or what's in it for me. So as you or the trainers working with you are putting together a course, answer the question on every objective. So many times as trainers, we are so focused on what we need a student or an adult learner to get according to standards that we forget that the learner may have his or her own objectives in mind. And then secondly, if you were to go to the other side of the table and think about the training you're putting together from your own viewpoint, I always ask the question, what will be different about my learners at the end of this course? Between those two ways of looking at your structure, you may be able to come up with something more refined. I suggest that one tip is anytime you are working with a course outline or a program outline, you read verbs like to understand or to know until you've ordered your own cranium can opener, by which you can open the skull and look down on the brains. Those are not measurable. Better to have verbs that are very strong and visual. Develop your tools in a way that give you visual verbs by which to guide your course development. In Moodle, we'll be able to pick better tools that will support that outcome. When I use the word or the acronym ID here, I'm meaning instructional design. And people who study that and have a degree in it or a lot of experience on it have the skills to take content and tools and craft them together beautifully so that we actually reach the goal that as a trainer we have in mind and the student learns what we had intended. So from the ID point of view, objectives are measurable statements of intent and also describe what the outcome of the training will be. So putting that all together, an objective tells the conditions that are imperative for the performance to occur when the student is finally using it as past training. So we say that's in the field or on the job when working with adults, and we're saying that when the student in the classroom has learned something, they can actually use it, show it to us beyond the test, all the way into their next level of development and application or synthesis of the material. So look for in your statements things that will lead you to understand about tools, environment, roles they may play, circumstances under which your user or end user or learner might be trying to train them on. You could also be looking at a standard of acceptable performance. In many of the workplaces where we train, we have standards. For example, in healthcare, you must show that all of your employees have been trained on HIPAA for privacy and security of healthcare information, and that happens every year. So if we start with a strong objective that says that they can list, that they can demonstrate, that they can prove learning, we're in a much better condition to start our training than if we said, at the end of this course, you will know how to, or you will understand. Those are just not measurable. That's kind of my first tip for you to be taking a look at what's your foundation, what's your groundwork. Here's an example. I was talking about a task, a skill response report form, how you would fill it out if there were an event. If the objective was like this, would we have a good statement on which to build our Moodle course? I'll read it here, but I'll say it for those of you who might have difficulty with the visual portion. Skill response report form and an event. Complete the form accurately, legibly, and immediately. Criteria for measuring it. Rubric, in other words. Is it correct? Is it legible? And is it completed within 30 minutes? How many of you think that that would be an adequate objective or statement by which you could build your content, not just your testing, but your content in Moodle? All right. Here's the way we would do it. At the end of this seminar, learners will be able to formula for any of the objectives. Describe skills. And I find using a verb when you're doing that, a verb that you can see is the best start of a sentence. Describe the conditions, and further describe how you know it is done right. What is it that you see, you hear, you feel, you have proof of that you could put in the file to show that someone had that competency at the end of your Moodle course. So when we're looking at the kind of training we do and the way we build that foundation, is there are really three kinds of things that we as Moodle trainers can influence and change through training, called the cognitive, the behavior, and the affective objectives, meaning that we are giving material that is knowledge-based. Behavioral would mean that we are giving material and showing competency that is skill-based. Or third, we may be working to influence in some way the attitude, the mindset, the belief of our learner. It may be that they have a better understanding of why a policy is in place, or that we need to know certain math skills. When you have these, look at them. What do you think? How many of these are tools, or goals that our Moodle tools can help us reach? Truth, all three of them. The easiest one that we can do through our Moodle resources are the cognitive skills. Because we have ways of presenting, we can give tools that will allow all learners, those who learn by reading and seeing, those who learn by hearing, and those who learn by doing, all have materials that you place up there for them to use. Further, Moodle is an excellent tool for teaching skills, and we often couple it with video so that if we're teaching a skill by distance, we can teach it through video clips, through conversation, we can coach, and through video we can see the learner on the other end of the line performing that skill. Another example from healthcare, teach people in very rural Alaska who cannot get to classes in cities how to take care of patients. And in rural Alaska, because it is out of doors, there are many injuries related to fishing. So we want to teach how to remove a fish hook should one get embedded in your hand. And you know, just listening to me describe how to remove a fish hook will hardly make you an expert. Even reading about it or watching a video hardly makes you an expert. On the other hand, if you can watch and learn and then actually do it, video yourself doing it, or be watched by an expert as you do it on video visual channel, then we can guide as we go along. Finally, the student can come back after practicing on a mannequin with a fishhook. He or she can write up their observations and reflections about what they learned and maybe come up with the best tips that were most effective in them forming that function. Now, lastly, we talk about the thoughts, the attitudes, the intentions or mindset. And here, this is a very difficult one in any format for people. I think that the format of Moodle and our learning in Moodle with its educational foundation is to strongly promote interaction on our forums and reflection of what a student has learned. And indeed, this is something that we use both in the classroom and in distance learning for helping to develop a new attitude or a new belief or a greater understanding. So once again, I think that one of the tips and tricks with Moodle that we have over other systems is that we've incorporated things that will allow us to address the why, not just the what and the how of many of our learning outcomes. Well, one question that we always take a look at is how many objectives should you have at the base of your course? Just that you have one per skill or task. And the best practice that I hear is that if your course is going to be in a length of 2 hours, have up to 5 of these. So the question for us is that one Moodle course or is that one block in our Moodle? Please do not overestimate the power of your learners. Don't go to the point where you have 20 or 30 objectives for a course. Instead, why not chunk it? Have shorter courses with fewer objectives so that as each block in an objective or unit in an objective in a course is completed, and when all the objectives for one course are completed, you can give badges. Not only have the quiz and the grading, but let's make it fun. No gamification is being presented at the same time, and I am a strong believer in gamification. If you haven't heard something about it, see what you can see in the archives of our iMoot, and then plan to take the gamification course in Coursera. It's a fabulous look at what can we do to return fun and enjoyment and positive reinforcement to our learning environments. When you know those tools, just don't have the background yet to apply them. Once you have the good objectives, now you've got a framework to apply the gamification tools and badges in a way that is neither too many or too few to be effective in your training. So again, you might want to jot down that with your setting of objectives that will be the foundation for a good Moodle course, pick out one per skill or task that you're teaching or training. Consider if your course runs 2 hours, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 objectives for that. Over that, you're a little bit over the top. Maybe you need a second course or a part B or some other way to chunk it for the learner. Do I say this? Remember the first slide said WIFM, W-I-I-F-M, is key to learning. And the WIFM, for even a lot of us on this iMoot, we're just chuckling and laughing over the badges and going after them. It's added a new level of fun. And listeners, is a really key piece in all of our learning today for adults and kids alike. I may suggest to you things to watch out for. Please avoid objectives that describe the content of the course. So don't consider it a good objective if you have written, at the end of this course, the student will be able to use math tables through all digits and convert those to a binomial system. That's a selling point. That's a descriptor, but it certainly is not sufficient foundation for building a course. You'll have to tear that all apart to get down to the pieces that one by one, as the learner knows each piece, the end, they can say, yes, I took a course on that topic, but here's what I learned. Your objectives should not be describing practice sessions, nor should they be what the trainer intends to do. Of any objective that uses any of these statements or verbs. See them on the screen? Many of you have seen an objective that talks to the point of knowing or understanding. And I always love is the objective that says, at the end of this course, you will fully understand the, and it gives some descriptions. Notice that some of these are about cognitive information, like comprehending. Some of these are about skills and what you can do, such as one that would start with experience. A lot of them are about the attitudinal or affective objectives. Have faith in, understand, believe, have a new opinion about, consider, have feeling for. The ones that are truly difficult for trainers to train. Here's your test. Objectives detail should permit any other trainer to take your course and set it up so that the learners learn the same skills, come out at the end with competency equal to you or any other trainer, and that the learners are able to evaluate their own performance no matter which trainer is leading that course. How do we do it? We know that in Moodle we have fabulous training tools and ways that we can aid students in test taking. But what else can we do? Well, let's step back and see, here are some examples. We're going to select which way we will evaluate. Are you familiar with the acronym ADDIE? ADDIE is a standard that instructional designers have used for years that take you through the design and development process, from assessment at the beginning, to design, to developing, to implementing, to evaluating. And in doing this cycle, you have a full life cycle for your course and you don't forget to do something. I think often we start with the D. We don't do that pre-work of checking out what our subject matter specialist has in the way of the objectives in the background and what do our learners know coming in. You may have standards. Here, for example, there may be safety standards if it is a skill that you are teaching them, or it may be a standard that is safety for your organization. In other words, in some of our schools here in the United States, we have to watch for safety, not only for physical safety, but for bullying, or even for safety of one's religious beliefs in a classroom where we have students of many performance standards is another. Healthcare, we see a lot of this, that you not only need to know how to take a temperature, you have to do it without injuring a patient. And lastly, best practices. I think this is a key tool for all of us to use, in that we are able to look at what others are doing and what standards that we in the learning profession have come up with for teaching certain types of. I mentioned to you on that the American Society for Training and Development, ASTD. We'll talk a little bit about this, but it's a great tool for all the Moodlers to join that organization, as it is international in scope and able to bring together that one environment people who want to teach better. Here are some of the tools that I suggest that you integrate into your Moodling. First of all, go out and Google a little bit about adult learning theory. Know a little bit more about what's there. Even if you're teaching kids, what's happened in the understanding of adult learning is amazing. In my own career, I started out working with kids with special learning needs, and then I graduated to working with adults. My biggest surprise was that the tools that I learned for working with students with learning challenges were one-on-one exactly the tools that we use with adults to help them get it. Take a look at adult learning theory and look at how we are learning from neuroscience about how the brain works. You have a copy of Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom is pretty cool. Bloom and his fellow researcher Krathwohl, many, many years ago, set out to figure out what are the levels by which we learn. So, for example, before you can adequately know how to operate a machine and discuss it and ask questions about it and even learn about it, learn the vocabulary. Learn what an on button looks like on that machine and where to find it. Know what kind of power it requires to run it. Know the labels, know how to talk about it. And once you've got that base level and you go forward, then you can start learning concepts. As you increase in your knowledge, you can not only operate it, but you can compare and contrast, and eventually it becomes a tool that you are so adept at using that you might even discover new uses for that tool. Consider reading 4 things. 1, there's a chapter in a book called Training Design Basics that discusses great tools regarding how learners learn. Another book by ASTD called Training Basics also has a chapter 4. And those 2 tools are excellent. And I will try to put those citations up on our site. I don't think we got them loaded this morning. Give you where you want to look for those quick reads. Thirdly, any other handouts that we place up there might be of benefit to you, and I have many of those in our own Moodle, which is called the Alaska Distance Learning Network. So those of you who want to take this to a further level, if you will connect with me personally, I can put you into the trainer course and let you poke through that and see if there's something. Lastly, I suggest that you look for Mager, M-A-G-E-R. Mager's the guy who wrote a book called Designing Learning Objectives, I believe it was, many years ago, and has sort of become the foundation of that whole field. He has a great little program that if you go through it, it will help you complete this learning on how to set the foundation for your Moodle course. Contact me. On the last slide, I'll have both an email address and a phone number, and of course through the lounge here and such are a couple of other ways that we could take that further. I'm also on Skype. In using those objectives, my suggestion to you in your Moodle course that you share them in what I would call the session opener, which I suggest in Moodle that they are part of the top block. For just a few objectives, they may be actual text in the top block, or if your top block is populated with buttons to different parts of the class, you may have a button now for syllabus or overview. If you don't have those, why not make a button just for the objectives? Share them again at the end of the course. Apply them to the evaluation tools, both in terms of the tests that your learners have to take, and in the evaluation that you may be asking them to indicate how good was this class and what did they get from this class. Doing the session evaluation at the end of the class, are you using just level 1 testing? You heard about the 4 levels? Patrick is the researcher who developed the 4 levels of evaluation, and he says that most of what we do to figure out if a course is good is level 1 evaluation. Was it easy to log in? Did you understand this? Was the registration easy to follow? Classroom-based one or a seminar? Was the environment comfortable for your learning? None of those questions tell us anything about how well the learner performs afterwards, do they? So look up Kirkpatrick and learn a little bit about 4 levels of evaluation if you want to ramp up your tools in order to be even better in Moodle courses. So let's try it. Our example here is that you and your team are meeting. You're going to discuss the new policy regarding the use of BlackBerry technology. It's easier for you to think about iPhone or iPad or some other technology. Go right ahead. Think for a minute, and you can either unmute and share verbally, or you can write it on the chat. What do the learners in your environment want to know about that communication? They want to know. What do they need to know? Have any suggestions? Sure. They need to know how the equipment works and any safety implications of it. They may also need to know what your policies at your school or your workplace have about using that technology. What they want to know is the fun part of it. So maybe if your objectives showed the ability to do some of the fun things for work or for the outcome of the class, you'd have a marriage of the with them and the educational need that you're trying to fulfill. Secondly, you ask, what would learners be able to do when you finish? This is a sample question which interestingly came to us Tuesday night because we had developed a new technology or use of a new phone actually in an old technology that a volunteer uses it for 2 weeks to take calls and then another volunteer gets it for 2 weeks to take calls and so forth. The new phone, you have to know how to lock it, else you may make 20 repeat calls to one of your last tried to reach you. And our volunteers were annoying customers because one customer got 20 callbacks and rather outraged with that. So we found that not only did they need to know how to make calls, return calls, erase calls, they needed to know how to lock the screen to avoid accidental callbacks. The last question is really the big one. For the trainer, how do you know they know and can do it right? What would you use in Moodle to make that happen? Again, I'll watch for notes on the board here and comments or hands that want to share how you would do it. Great suggestion. Sure, we could do the written test that asks them cognitive questions about the rules and regulations, but when it comes to do they know the skills, how about they have a test bed where they actually use the technology to place a call? How about if the technology is there that we can evaluate them doing the key skills in our objectives? And best of all, what if we had them do a video of themselves making, placing the calls, etc., and we would now have a document for their file that showed that they themselves were tested on those procedures. Show them in the video, show them using the material. And for those of you who might be in compliance training, this could be very important for the security and regulation and possible protection if a lawsuit occurred in your company. But when we look at that background and break it down in Moodle, I find that there are a number of tools for design, for navigation, for interactivity, and for evaluation. I've talked about just a couple of these so far. Our formats, the themes and templates that we're using, are the first level of how we can organize a class based on good objectives to attain good outcomes and not just be cute or pretty or fun or friendly, but to have all of those characteristics plus a return on the investment of the learner's time and your time as the trainer. So in choosing which design or template, can you standardize things for all courses in a certain department or curriculum or across your organization? The goal would be here that once the learner is familiar with coming into your Moodle site, they would do best and be most efficient if they were also familiar with where to find things. So we go from design to navigation. I find that if students are complaining about online courses or mediated courses, no matter whether it's Moodle or another platform, the biggest complaint is about navigation. They can't find things, they miss things, they're finding that materials that are embedded lower down they're not able to even locate. So what can you do in Moodle to help with navigation? I know you're thinking about buttons after the iMoot. That might be one way for you to create things much like we use stop signs and yield signs and speed signs on our highways. What is one set of navigation tools that you could create that all of your classes in your Moodle would share those same signals? You know, if you can do it at the navigation level, then you can allow your various trainers in your various classes to have some creativity and some outside the norm. Just consider how design and navigation, when it is learned by a learner, be applied to the next class and the next class. If Moodle has a strength, it's the tools for interactivity. I find that Moodle offers us more than any other platform that I have worked on. So grateful for that, because you know the problem. People get used to classes on the internet and they're page turners. They're kind of like this visual. It's read it, click it, read it, click it. Reading it does not change anything in your brain. When you're doing something, typing on the screen, making notes, showing us what you're doing with that information, it actually causes in the neuroscience component changes in the brain that we call learning. So all of the plugins, the tools, the resources, the advancements in Moodle are key for this. I challenge you to add to the discussion forum that's open now about what would you like to see next for Moodle to develop. Because I believe that as we're talking with the younger and younger learners, we're hearing ideas that are affecting all of our learners of all ages. What do you know? What would you like to see happen? In your wildest dreams, what would you like Moodle to provide that we can use in this format at a distance? Talk about tools for evaluation in Moodle. You know, we've got good guides for quizzes and that sort of thing. But wouldn't it be neat if we had more tools that allowed us to have the students, some of you may be doing this now, where you have the students take a video and upload it, and that becomes their course evaluation tool. We may need some meta-analysis tools so that across a class, you've got 40 videos coming in. Is there a way that you can compare and contrast those with big data tools that would allow investigating the words that the students said, comparing them class to class, giving an analysis of what themes were coming up? You know, if you had tools that would do that and give you a report, first of all, it would be instructive to your students, and second of all, it would be beneficial to your trainer or developer to determine how well did I meet the objectives as a trainer. All of the students are in there verbalizing, giving us feedback and learning. I did a really good job. Now, at this point, I really would like to have more content back from you in terms of what are your favorite methods and tools. And we are starting to become two camps. One is the camp of the person who is still on the 1 point, usually up to the 1.9 Moodles, and those who are 2.0 to 2.5. So if you do make comments on the chat board about your favorite tool, would you please indicate what platform you're on? If you would do that for a moment, I'm going to be quiet. If you would wish to speak, unmute your mute button and give it to us verbally. So those of you who are on 2 point, what's your favorite tools for ensuring that you've got the best course developed and delivered, that it's meeting the objectives you had in mind? Gavin's talking about using the Moodle tool guide as a map in 2 point. Gavin, if you've got an example or an illustration of that and want to speak to it or write a note, Pretty fascinating. Judy's excited about Big Blue Button. I think it's a great tool. I've been excited about this for many, many years, and I'm really tickled to see us getting to work with it in this capacity. And I'm still missing a few things in that they'll be developing a few more tools, but it sure is great. Kevin has just given us a link related to his use of the tool guide. Sam is commenting on the feature of activity completion. Yeah, I felt like I had gone to heaven when we finally got that into Moodle, because for learners, if they can click it off when they come back into their course and they see that's done, it's motivating and gives them sort of the energy to go on to the next assignment or activity that you might have had in mind. He mentions the Echo assignment plugin, which I am unfamiliar with. I'll have to see that in the Moodle archive, in the iMoot archives here, and bring that up to my knowledge. How are you all seeing the use of the buttons that might be how would you apply using buttons to stimulate interest in and completion of well-written objectives that will end up with changes in learners' knowledge, learners' skills, or learners' attitudes? Badges. Badges are good. That's what I meant to say, not buttons. Forgive me. Well, I'm going to break this down a little bit and kind of get up to the point where if there's any discussion we can continue. But in my thinking about it, I pulled this into several different phases. Tips and tricks to start, tips and tricks to build, then tips and tricks to deliver, and finally some tips to improvement. Sort of a modified ADDIE look at what we are doing. Start with the design document. Before you even turn on the computer and go to Moodle, take a sheet of paper and do a mind map or an outline. If you're a visual thinker, a mind map might be good for you. If you are a sequential, concrete, logical thinker, an outline might be better for you. This design document should be a combination of two things. What's the learning plan? So if you've got school objectives or compliance training requirements or whatever the impetus for your Moodle class is, that's one piece of this. You've got to take it over to those well-written objectives with verbs that are active and that you can actually see when someone does that verb. In your design document, think about creating a storyboard. Now, before PowerPoint, storyboard used to be a piece of paper in which you had a box drawn. At the top of the box, you would describe what the visual looks like, and at the bottom of the box, you would describe what the written or the audio would look like. Today, a storyboard, if you use that same concept, can be done in PowerPoint as a tool for you to organize and rearrange the order in which you put things. I think it is still a very effective thing for a design document. What's nice about that is if you need to go back to a teacher or a department head or a client, you can use this as part of your proposal and your working document to guide all the way along, so that when you have changes suggested by someone outside who may be influencing the support for your course, you have something tangible to put in their hands for them to work on and to draw on and give you good feedback about. Secondly, align every choice that you're making in that document with a learning objective. Too often I see teachers and trainers who get glam in their eyes. They are so excited about something that they overuse it or misuse it. That could be the danger that we have in badges after this iMoot, is that we may see a use for badges in everything we do. Yet that makes it commonplace, and that will make it lose its true value. So, every time you're going to use a resource or a tool in your course, be hard on yourself. Choose it only if you can show, not justify, but show that the use of that material or that tool links back specifically to accomplishing the verb in your learning objective. Now, I can't resist having all those extraneous, I'll have to admit, because I want to believe there are learners out there who want to do more than achieve the objectives. I hope to get learners so excited about a topic that they want to go on and explore and do more. I've learned to put all that material in an add-on or a separate block or somehow mark it so that they know this is for the above and beyond, the fun and the exciting part. Best with young students or students who are not well disciplined that you situate it in a hierarchical mode so that they must get through the required material and the required objectives before they can go into the add-on material. Here's an example for you. We were teaching anatomy and physiology to high schoolers, and these high schoolers had to learn certain words and be able to identify them on a map of the body. There are a lot of good games out there that reinforce those lessons. And once a student had shown proficiency with 25 words, we would allow them to go to a link out to a game, and in that game it was a time test with awards for quickly learning. And you know, in that game they had, say, 150 words, included our 25. But, it didn't hurt in any way for the excited student to get that much more under his or her knowledge power than if it was outside of the objective for our class. Yet if we had incorporated that, consider the poor student who would struggle to get the first 25. See that instead of 25, we were talking about 150 words and how demotivating that might be. When you get to the building stage, you've done all the planning, you have been strict with yourself to say, this is what we said we were going to cover and how we're going to cover it. Now, how are we going to do this in a way that will build effectively? Old school technique that works well today is to create a style guide and post that style guide for your use and all of the persons who might be building classes on your Moodle. That style guide should say that the preferred way of putting together courses here looks like this. Now, before you think that's restrictive, think about major companies. Let me take, for example, Coca-Cola or American Airlines. They have a strict style guide that says we use red behind our words in the logo for Coca-Cola. You can't use just any red. Here is the chemical mix or the tones for that red. And when you write Coca-Cola, the typeface must look like this. Can you imagine how much easier you would make it for your learners who take multiple courses in your Moodle if you had a style guide that their eye was accustomed to and they didn't have to relearn every time they come into a new course what this one is going to be like? So consider what are the basics that if you're building the same way, every time, would help the students, and also consider what's going overboard, because there's a time and a place for a course to have a little bit of a difference to it and a flair to it. If you want some good examples of this, look at Coursera.org. Take several of their courses. If you've heard the talk about MOOCs, Massive Open Online Courses, you'll have heard about Coursera, all one word, mashing together the word course and era, like passage of time, .org. When you take 4 or 5 courses in there, you will see that you learn how to navigate them, and yet each course has its own little flair that's a little different. Lastly, on the building, again, I say avoid distractions, features that are fun but do not support learning. I worked with one developer who had little gamey animations that would go on in the border blocks in the courses, and it was It was for some learners distracting. It was for other learners annoying. We've learned a lot about the human brain, and yet we're not taking it into consideration in all of our Moodle classes that how the teacher perceives learning may not be the way the learner learns. As we know more about things like learning challenges, like TBI, brain injuries, like post-traumatic stress disorder, we need to be cognizant that our flashy animations and our multiple colors and our endeavoring to make it look exciting could actually shortchange the learning process for a number of our learners. And here in the United States, I'm working with a lot with veterans, military veterans, who, to look at them in the classroom, I would not know that they have difficulty adjusting to pages with a lot of moving objects on them, or in which the colors are distracting or hard for them to see. So I would say be very cognizant of this and test with your learners. Look for those who are the ones most challenged by your skills and your products in Moodle. Maybe you can come close to a central tendency that would include them along with others in the class. That relates to this next component on delivery of your course. Working with adults, I've learned that not all are IT geeks. Adult learners just don't know how to press the buttons. Our biggest complaint about Moodle is logging in. Heard that from your users? You know, when you have it open to a group of people outside of the school system and they have to go through differences on an erratic schedule, it can kind of get in the way. So you figure out and find out from them what are the things that are getting in the way for them and see what you can do to change. I'm excited about some of the options to do a single sign-on through some social media as a way that Moodle might endeavor to make this more accessible. Alaska has issues with bandwidth, and we have issues with a lot of our learners being connected over satellite hops. So know who you will be teaching to and how big the files are. It may be small where you're living. It may take a long time for the end user to get it. And if it takes a long time, it's going to demotivate. All the badges in the world won't keep someone online if it's taking forever. I would offer to you that attention span is even more limited, and if you have watched the rise of YouTube and the very short chunks, 2 to 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, that someone will watch a YouTube, that's our new standard in training. It used to be an hour, it used to be 15 minutes, even recently it was 7 minutes, we're down to 3 to 5. So if you think like YouTube, and figure your chunks in your classwork that allows someone to change pace, change their attention, or even get up and leave the class, you're going to be more effective. Well, the last two things you're probably doing now. Testing your Moodle before you open the class. But who are you testing with? Another trainer? Someone on the staff? It would be neat if you could work with a student group and say, hey, we're working on this and we'd love to have a couple of students who work through this. And there might be different motivations for them. It could be like we're using crowdsourcing out there to develop new findings in science. What if it were just open and all the students who wanted could go through there and tell you what worked and didn't work without fear that they were talking out of line or it would affect their grade? Pretty cool, huh? Lastly, may I suggest to you that partway through your course, you do what the ID people call a formative evaluation. With all of my learners, just before what would be a third way through the class, I'll start asking them, how is the Moodle working? And I will watch the records to see where they're getting to, what they're looking at, but more important to me is them telling me how it's working. Because looking at the reports and seeing what pages they've been on and what activities they've done, I can't tell how they've had to muscle through or what was annoying to them. The reports, conversational and in a document if they're remote, really key for that. So in that formative evaluation, the closer to live conversation you can get, the better. Think about a Skype, think about a Google Hangout day, think about a way that you can talk and hear from your participants what's irritating, what's annoying, what's taking them a lot of time. Irritating, annoying, taking a lot of time. Criteria that if you can go back and change anything in your course, more likely that they're going to learn what you had in mind, and you know what, they're going to have enough fun that they'll come back for your next course. Now, the end of that cycle is that you're going to evaluate, and for most of us, we're on to the next course. We don't have time in our workday to go back and truly evaluate. More like the next time we're assigned that we have to give that course, we dress it up, fix it up, and do it again. Just to you that in your planning document, you put in time for this evaluating cycle. More than fixing broken links, it's what are the resources have you come across that might do an even better job of reaching that learning objective. And those of you who are working as consultants or working with people who are paying for their Moodle courses, put in your budget, put in your proposal, not only time, but money to do an evaluation and upgrading cycle. Maybe doing it now for that review between courses, but again, I'm talking about a bigger look at what worked, what didn't work, what was annoying, irritating, time-consuming, or troublesome for the learner, and what you can do to fix that. Lastly, I'd say every several times, every 3 to 5 times through a course, plan to scrap it, throw it away, start fresh. We try to get as many uses out of our courses as we can for conservation of time, but it's at some point it's old and it's difficult. It's very difficult for us to be sure we got all of our links and new materials changed, and it's difficult for the learner who may not understand that we have been developing this over time. So throw it out, start fresh, use some of the best things that worked, and get rid of the others. So I ask that maybe in our discussion forum following this presentation, give your ideas. With your learning population, how do you save time? How do you make it less work and more fun designing, building, and developing your Moodle courses? These are the key things that if we can share and keep a dialogue going, we are really living Moodlers, because dialogue and discussion boards are the backdrop for, I think, some of the best things that we can do in developing our course. Those discussion boards and getting our learners and our students motivated to use those, that's the biggest trick. That's the way that if we can get them giving good content and concrete ideas, everyone in the classroom becomes a trainer. We learn from them too. With that, I'm kind of closing today with my content to you. I want to thank you for being part of this presentation. It's fun to get your ideas, and I do want to read more and have more dialogue with you. I will sign off with this and tell you on the last page at the bottom you'll see my email address and a phone number. Oh, I see an error in that phone number. There's a 0 in there. That is a dash, so that you still only have digits 227-2393. Forgive me for not better proofreading that last slide. Thank you one and all. I really appreciate it today and hope to see you in some of the other Moodle presentations. Any comments, I'll be online for a little bit and we can talk a little bit, or use your chat box to talk more.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, I'd just like to take the opportunity as part of the iMoot team here to thank you for your presentation. It was very insightful. Others are welcome to stay on and continue the chat and maybe give some feedback or questions in relation to that, but we just wanted to thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.